The gatekeeper's error. It was a bright, crisp morning in San Francisco, the kind of day that seemed made for optimism and new beginnings. The Grand Convention Center in the heart of the city buzzed with anticipation as hundreds of guests, media, personnel, and dignitaries gathered for what was being dubbed the biggest tech event of the year, Google's Global Innovation Forum. The forum was set to unveil revolutionary advancements in artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and sustainability, an event so prestigious that tickets were virtually impossible to obtain. The massive hall had been booked months in advance, and the air was electric with the promise of change. Little did anyone know that the day would take a turn no one could have foreseen. At the center of this unfolding narrative was a man whose name was synonymous with innovation and humility, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, and one of the most respected leaders in the world of technology. Unlike many CEOs who often arrived in grand motorcades or surrounded by entourages, Sundar had a habit of traveling simply, often choosing to walk or take a modest car. Today was no different. Wishing to experience the event like an ordinary attendee and observe it through the lens of his guests, he had left behind his official convoy and decided to arrive quietly in an understated black sedan driven by a long-trusted employee. As Sundar approached the entrance of the convention center, he felt a deep sense of pride. The event represented years of relentless work by countless engineers and visionaries across Google. It was a showcase not of corporate dominance, but of what humanity could achieve when fueled by curiosity and compassion. Smiling warmly, dressed in a simple tailored suit and wearing his signature glasses, Sundar stepped out of the car and walked toward the entrance alone, carrying nothing but a slim laptop bag slung over his shoulder. Unbeknownst to him, a young security guard named Marcus Taylor had been hired by an external agency for this very event. Marcus was new to such high-profile assignments, having worked mostly small concerts and sporting events. He had been given a strict list of VIPs with accompanying ID badges and explicit orders not to allow anyone without proper credentials through the main gate. The organizers wanted to ensure no unauthorized person, especially no journalists posing as guests, would slip through, given the sensitive nature of some announcements. Marcus was determined to do his job well. Dressed in a crisp, flu security uniform, his eyes scanned every attendee meticulously. He was nervous, yes, but also proud to be entrusted with such responsibility. As the morning crowd began to surge, Marcus stood tall, repeating to himself, "No badge, no entry." At that moment, Sundar arrived at the checkpoint. Having always trusted that people knew him at such events, he had not bothered to wear an official badge around his neck. After all, why would he need one to enter a forum organized by his own company? He smiled politely and attempted to walk through. "Excuse me, sir," Marcus said, stepping firmly into his path. "I need to see your badge, please." Caught slightly off guard but still smiling, Sundar replied, "I'm Sundar Pichai. I don't have a badge with me." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. The name was instantly recognizable, of course. But training had warned him about potential impersonators. Just last month, a similar event had suffered a PR disaster when a man pretending to be a famous entrepreneur was allowed backstage without verification. Determined not to make the same mistake, Marcus maintained his stance. "I'm sorry, sir," Marcus responded carefully. "Without official credentials, I can't let anyone inside, even if they claim to be Mr. Pichai." For a moment, silence hung between them. Sundar, known for his humility and patience, studied the young guard. He could see the nervous resolve in Marcus's eyes. Many might have raised their voice or demanded immediate entry, but that was not Sundar's way. He admired those who took their duties seriously. Gently, Sundar said, "I appreciate that you're doing your job. Would it be possible to call someone from the organizing team to confirm my identity?" Marcus hesitated. The protocol allowed for such verification, but the event was already in full swing and the senior coordinators were occupied inside. His radio crackled with voices requesting crowd updates and logistic checks. Flustered and feeling the weight of the decision, Marcus shook his head. "I'm sorry, sir. Without prior clearance or a badge, I can't escalate this right now. I have to follow the rules." Around them, several onlookers began to notice the exchange. A few pulled out their phones. Whispers spread quickly. Is that really Sundar Pichai being stopped? The security team and nearby staff had not yet realized what was happening at the outer gate. Sundar, sensing that the situation could soon spiral into an embarrassing spectacle, chose to step back. He didn't want the young guard to face public humiliation or disciplinary action later. Smiling warmly again, he said, "I respect that you are following the rules. I'll step aside and make a call." Marcus breathed a sigh of relief, but still wondered if he had just denied the real CEO. His training had prepared him for handling difficult guests, but not for moments like this. Sundar walked a short distance away and called Lisa Tran, the lead event coordinator. Lisa nearly dropped her headset when she heard his calm voice. "Lisa, it's Sundar. I'm at the main gate. I seem to have run into a small issue. Could you assist?" Within minutes, Lisa and two senior executives rushed to the entrance, visibly flustered. They apologized profusely to Sundar and assured Marcus that everything was in order. The guard stood frozen, realization dawning upon him, his face flushing crimson. He stammered an apology. Sundar, however, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing, Marcus. Never apologize for following your duty. If anything, your diligence makes this event safer for everyone." By now, a small crowd of attendees and journalists had gathered, some recording the scene. The moment became an impromptu lesson in leadership, humility, and grace. Cameras captured Sundar's kind words and the visibly emotional Marcus, who thanked him quietly. What none of them knew was that this simple act of kindness, one leader's choice not to pull rank, would soon go viral, drawing millions of views and sparking global conversations about leadership, respect, and humanity in positions of power. As Sundar finally entered the event, the warmth in his heart was unmistakable. A small hiccup at the gate had turned into an opportunity to lead by example. And this was only the beginning of a day that would hold many more surprises. The moment goes viral. The events of the morning had unfolded in a way no one could have predicted. As Sundar Pichai finally walked into the main hall of the Google Global Innovation Forum, escorted now by a visibly embarrassed but grateful Lisa Tran and two of his senior team members, the buzz among the guests was palpable. News of the incident at the entrance had spread quickly inside. A few snippets of video had already surfaced on social media, shared by attendees who had been near the gate. Within minutes, the footage began picking up traction online. First, on X, formerly Twitter, then Instagram, and finally on news sites covering the event live. The clip was simple but powerful. Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google, stopped at the gate of his own event by a young security guard, treated the situation with patience and kindness, and praised the guard for doing his duty. The story resonated deeply, in a world often weary of arrogance from those in power. Inside the grand auditorium, the decor was stunning. Sleek, minimalist designs, towering LED screens, and soft ambient lighting that gave the entire space an atmosphere of innovation and warmth. Rows upon rows of engineers, developers, journalists, and invited dignitaries sat waiting for the keynote address. Yet, amidst all the technical anticipation, the story of what had just happened outside had already shifted the emotional tone of the event. People whispered among themselves, "Did you hear what Sundar did? He didn't even raise his voice." That guard must have been terrified, but Sundar handled it with such grace. Even Lisa, walking beside him, said softly, "Sundar, I'm so sorry again for the mix-up. I had no idea security was being that strict today." Sundar smiled. "Lisa, don't be sorry. Marcus was doing his job. I respect that." He glanced back toward the entrance hall. "In fact, when we have a break later, I'd like you to bring him backstage. I want to speak with him again, privately." Lisa nodded, touched by Sundar's thoughtfulness. As Sundar prepared to take the stage for his keynote, his mind returned briefly to Marcus Taylor. The young man had shown courage, discipline, and integrity, all qualities that Sundar valued in any employee. The thought of this small but meaningful interaction stayed with him as he stepped up to the podium. The applause that greeted him was thunderous, but there was a noticeable warmth to it, a deeper, more personal appreciation that many in the audience felt now that they had glimpsed the man behind the title. Sundar began his keynote with genuine humility. He spoke about the power of technology to serve humanity, to break barriers and to foster connection and empathy in a fragmented world. Technology should never replace the human values that bind us together, he said, his voice steady. It should enhance them. The words carried added weight in light of that morning's events, and more than a few in the audience felt a lump in their throat as they listened. Meanwhile, outside the main hall, Marcus stood alone in a small staff lounge, still reeling from the encounter. His fellow guards had heard what happened and offered a mix of teasing and congratulations. "Man, you stopped Sundar Pichai." One laughed, clapping him on the back. But Marcus wasn't laughing, he was mortified. "I didn't mean to disrespect him," he said quietly. "I was just trying to do my job." His heart was still pounding from the realization that he had, in fact, stopped one of the most powerful figures in the world of tech. He feared that at any moment, someone might come and tell him he was being let go, but instead, an unexpected message came through his radio. "Marcus, please report to backstage per Mr. Pichai's request." Marcus's breath caught. He straightened his uniform, wiped his sweaty palms on his trousers, and walked toward the area indicated. His steps were heavy with both anxiety and curiosity. Backstage, Sundar had just concluded his keynote to a standing ovation and was taking a brief respite with his core team. When Marcus was escorted in, Sundar rose from his seat and greeted him with a warm smile. "Marcus, good to see you again," he said, extending his hand. Marcus, overwhelmed, shook it cautiously. "Sir, I'm truly sorry about earlier," he began, voice trembling. "I didn't recognize you without a badge. I was just trying to follow protocol." Sundar placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "And you did exactly what you should have done. You upheld your responsibility with professionalism and integrity. That is something to be proud of, not ashamed of." Marcus felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over him. To his surprise, Sundar continued, "I want to share something with you. Early in my career, I was often in situations where I didn't have authority or recognition. It taught me the importance of every role, no matter how big or small. Today, you reminded me of that lesson." Marcus, unable to hold back emotion, blinked rapidly to keep tears at bay. Sundar smiled gently and added, "Also, if you'd be open to it, I'd like to invite you and your family to tour Google's headquarters next week as my guest. I think you'd find it inspiring." Marcus, stunned, nodded. "Thank you, sir. I'd be honored." The story of this backstage moment soon made its way out, as one of Sundar's senior staff discreetly shared it with the PR team. Far from trying to spin or embellish it, they felt it was a genuine story of leadership worth highlighting. By that afternoon, major news outlets had picked up on the videos circulating online. Headlines began appearing. Google CEO praises. Guard who denied him entry, an unexpected lesson in humility, and Sundar Pichai's act of kindness goes viral. Comments poured in from all over the world. Many praised Marcus for his courage. Even more lauded Sundar for his grace and humanity. Meanwhile, back at the convention, Sundar's team noticed that the media response was overwhelmingly positive. Some suggested issuing a formal statement, but Sundar declined. "Let the actions speak for themselves," he said. Instead, he focused on engaging with attendees, many of whom now approached him with renewed admiration, sharing their own stories of leadership and humility. Marcus, now something of an unlikely hero, found himself approached by other security staff, guests, and even Google employees, all offering kind words. His phone buzzed nonstop with messages from friends and family who had seen the videos. For a young man who had just been trying to do his job, it was all surreal. But the day's surprises were far from over. Late in the afternoon, Sundar was scheduled to participate in a panel discussion on ethical leadership in the age of AI. The session had already attracted great interest, but now the auditorium was packed to capacity. As the moderator introduced Sundar, she added with a knowing smile. And before we begin, I think we should all take a moment to appreciate not just the mind of a great leader, but the heart of one as well. The audience erupted in applause. Referencing the now viral moment at the gate, Sundar took his seat with humility, and as the discussion progressed, he spoke candidly about how today's experience had reinforced his belief that leadership is not about privilege, but responsibility. No one is above the rules, he said. Respecting processes, respecting people, that's what builds trust in any organization. After the panel, Sundar found a quiet moment to reflect. The incident had unfolded organically, but it had sparked a global conversation about humility and leadership, something he had always strived to embody, but rarely had such a public opportunity to demonstrate. He was grateful not for the attention, but for the reminder that simple moments, when met with kindness and integrity, can ripple far beyond their origin. That evening, as the event wound down, Marcus prepared to leave. He had been offered a chance to stay and watch the final keynote as a guest, and though he had initially hesitated, he accepted. As he stepped out into the cool San Francisco night, his heart was full. He thought about the words Sundar had shared with him backstage, about the value of every role and every action. For the first time in a long while, he felt deeply proud of the job he did. Across the world, people were still sharing the video, adding their own reflections. One comment summed it up perfectly. In an era where so many seek power without accountability, today Sundar Pichai showed us what real leadership looks like. What neither Marcus nor Sundar yet realized was that this moment was only the beginning. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities and new challenges that would take the lessons of today even further. For both men, the journey had just begun. The ripple effect. The following morning dawned with an atmosphere unlike any other. What had started as an unexpected small moment between Sundar Pichai and a diligent young security guard had now become a global headline. By sunrise, major news networks such as CNN, BBC, Bloomberg, and CNBC were running segments about Sundar's grace and Marcus's integrity. The video clip of their brief handshake backstage, paired with Sundar's kind words, had been viewed over 200 million times across various platforms overnight. Tech blogs, leadership journals, and business forums were already dissecting the incident, praising it as a rare public display of humility in an industry often criticized for hubris. Hashtags like leadership with grace and respect for all roles began trending worldwide. Sundar Pichai, however, began his day as he always did, with quiet reflection. He rose early in his modest Palo Alto home, took a walk in his garden, and read the global news on his tablet. As he scrolled through the articles about himself, he felt both humbled and amused by the attention. He had not sought this publicity. In fact, he would have been content had the moment remained a simple exchange between himself and Marcus. Yet he also recognized that sometimes fate places a spotlight on small acts that can teach larger lessons. He smiled, thinking, if this encourages even one leader out there to treat others with more respect, then perhaps it was meant to happen this way. Over breakfast, his wife, Anjali, glanced up from her phone and said warmly, "You're a trending topic again. But this time not for a product launch or an AI breakthrough, for kindness." Sundar chuckled gently. "Kindness is a technology we can all afford to share," he replied. Their children had also seen the video online and were now asking questions about humility, duty, and leadership. The family's conversation over toast and fruit became a quiet moment of teaching and reflection, one that Sundar would treasure in the days to come. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus Taylor's life had been turned upside down overnight. The humble, young security guard who had simply followed protocol now found his phone flooded with thousands of messages. Journalists were camped outside his small apartment building. Reporters called his family members. Old friends he hadn't heard from in years sent congratulatory messages. Yet despite the whirlwind, Marcus remained grounded. Sitting at his kitchen table with his mother and younger sister, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and disbelief. "I was just doing my job," Marcus repeated, shaking his head. His mother, eyes shining with pride, replied, "And that's exactly why the world noticed." The security company that had hired him for the event now reached out with formal congratulations and even offered him a permanent promotion. But the biggest surprise came mid-morning when an email arrived from Sundar Pichai's personal office. "Dear Marcus, as discussed, I would like to personally invite you and your family for a private tour of Google HQ next week. We will also arrange a leadership luncheon where you can meet members of our executive team. Thank you again for embodying the values we all strive for." Tears welled in Marcus's eyes as he read the email aloud to his family. It was surreal. Only 24 hours ago, he had been nervously standing at the gate, hoping not to make a mistake. Now he was being personally invited by one of the most respected leaders in the world. It felt like a dream, but Marcus vowed to remain himself, humble, hardworking, and grounded. Elsewhere, within the walls of Google's Mountain View headquarters, the incident sparked a powerful internal conversation. Employees across all departments, from engineers to marketing staff, were discussing the viral moment on internal message boards. A spontaneous thread titled "Leadership Lessons from Sundar" had garnered thousands of comments. People shared personal reflections about leadership, respect, and empathy in the workplace. One engineer wrote, "I joined Google to work with great minds. Today I'm prouder because we have great hearts here too." Another added, "Thank you, Sundar, for reminding us that no role is too small to deserve respect." The HR and leadership development teams quickly saw an opportunity. They proposed adding a new module to Google's global leadership training, using the incident as a case study in humility and grace under pressure. The idea gained immediate traction. Within days, a draft titled "Leading with Empathy, Lessons from the Gate" was circulated internally, designed to be shared with new hires and managers alike. Sundar approved it personally but requested one addition: that Marcus Taylor's name be included prominently, with his permission, as a real-life example of integrity. By midweek, Google's PR team began fielding requests from major news outlets for an official interview with Sundar about the incident. True to his character, Sundar declined most, preferring to let the actions speak for themselves. However, he agreed to participate in a short recorded segment for an upcoming leadership summit where he would discuss the importance of empathy in corporate culture. During the filming of that segment, Sundar said softly but firmly, "In every organization, from the front desk to the C-suite, every individual matters. Titles should never shield us from accountability, nor should they distance us from compassion." Meanwhile, Marcus prepared for his visit to Google HQ. With guidance from his mother and sister, he chose a simple but smart outfit: pressed slacks, a button-down shirt, and a tie. He was nervous but excited. When the day arrived, Google arranged for a car to pick up Marcus and his family. As they drove onto the sprawling Google campus, Marcus's eyes widened at the scale and vibrancy of the place. Employees zipped around on colorful bicycles. Lush gardens and open workspaces dotted the landscape. It was a world far removed from his everyday life. They were greeted warmly at the visitor center by Lisa Tran herself, who now knew Marcus personally. She gave them a private tour of key areas: AI labs, sustainability initiatives, product development centers. Marcus was awed not just by the technology but by the energy of the people who worked there. Then came the highlight of the visit: a private lunch with Sundar and several senior leaders. The setting was casual, a sunlit garden patio with simple, healthy food. Sundar welcomed Marcus and his family with genuine warmth. As they sat down, Sundar began by saying, "Marcus, I wanted today to be about more than an invitation. I want it to be a conversation about values, about integrity, and about the kind of world we can build together." What followed was an hour of heartfelt discussion. Marcus shared his upbringing, his love for reading, his dreams for the future. Sundar listened attentively, occasionally nodding and asking thoughtful questions. At one point, Marcus's younger sister asked shyly, "Mr. Pichai, how did you stay so calm when my brother stopped you?" Sundar smiled gently. "Because leadership is about service, not ego," he replied. "Your brother reminded me of that, and I'm grateful." At the end of the lunch, Sundar made a quiet but life-changing offer. "Marcus, we value integrity, above all. If you're ever interested in exploring a career here at Google, security operations, leadership, or any other area, we would welcome your application. Take your time, no pressure. But know that this door is open. Marcus was speechless, tears once again threatening to fall. He thanked Sundar sincerely, knowing that this moment could shape the course of his life. As the family prepared to leave, Sundar handed Marcus a small envelope. Inside was a personal handwritten note. Dear Marcus, thank you for reminding all of us that integrity is the foundation of leadership. You inspire me. With gratitude, Sundar. The gesture meant more to Marcus than any headline or viral video ever could. In the days that followed, the story continued to ripple outward. Leadership experts referenced it in talks and articles. University professors included it in ethics courses. Business schools discussed it as a case study in emotional intelligence, and across social media, millions continued to share it as a rare and needed example of humility in the modern world. But for Sundar Pichai, the greatest reward was not the headlines. It was knowing that one small moment had sparked countless conversations about kindness, respect, and the power of doing what is right, even when no one is watching. And for Marcus Taylor, it was a reminder that sometimes simply standing firm in your values can open doors you never imagined. Little did they know, the story was far from over. New challenges and opportunities were about to emerge, ones that would test their values in even deeper ways. A global conversation begins. The days following Marcus's visit to Google headquarters unfolded with a momentum neither he nor Sundar could have anticipated. What had initially begun as a touching anecdote about leadership and humility had now swelled into something far larger. A global conversation about values in modern workplaces and the quiet strength of individuals in positions often overlooked. Across continents and industries, people began sharing their own experiences of moments when they had stood firm on principle or been shown unexpected kindness by leaders. This movement was no longer about a single viral video. It was about the universal longing for dignity, respect, and integrity at every level of society. Sundar Pichai observed this unfolding phenomenon with a mixture of wonder and quiet responsibility. Though media outlets continued to request interviews, he consistently declined, believing that the story's organic impact was more powerful than any corporate messaging. Internally, however, he took decisive steps. He called a series of leadership roundtables within Google, inviting managers from across the globe to engage in open dialogues about culture, respect, and empathy in the workplace. In these sessions, Sundar spoke candidly. Technology evolves rapidly, but our values must remain constant, he said. Every person in this company, from a new intern to a senior VP, deserves to be treated with humanity and respect. Leadership without empathy is hollow. These sessions resonated deeply with employees. Many managers confessed that they had become so focused on metrics and outcomes that they had forgotten the importance of personal connection. One team lead from Singapore shared, "Watching how you treated Marcus reminded me that we lead not just through strategy, but through how we make people feel." A young engineer from Berlin commented, "I used to think leadership was about being the smartest person in the room. Now I understand it's about listening and lifting others up." Inspired by this feedback, Google's People Operations team worked swiftly to develop a new global initiative called the Human Leadership Project. The project aimed to embed empathy, active listening, and integrity into every layer of the organization's leadership framework. It included workshops, coaching programs, and recognition platforms where employees could nominate peers for demonstrating values-driven leadership. Importantly, Sundar insisted that Marcus Taylor's story be used as a central case study, not to glorify himself but to spotlight the courage of those who uphold principles quietly, without expectation of reward. Beyond Google, the story sparked broader change. Business schools across the world began incorporating the incident into their leadership curricula. Professors highlighted it as a modern example of emotional intelligence in action. In boardrooms from Silicon Valley to Seoul, executives referenced Sundar's handling of the situation as a model for managing authority with grace. Even in government circles, leaders discussed how the story illustrated the importance of respecting every role within public service institutions. For Marcus Taylor, life had taken a profound turn. Though naturally introverted, he found himself invited to speak at conferences on integrity and leadership. His story resonated with frontline workers everywhere, security personnel, janitors, administrative staff, who often felt invisible in large organizations. When he addressed a leadership forum hosted by a global security company, Marcus shared from the heart, "I didn't stop Mr. Pichai because I wanted recognition. I stopped him because I believed in doing my job with integrity. And when he responded, with kindness instead of arrogance, he taught me and all of us what real leadership looks like." His words moved the audience to a standing ovation. That night, Marcus reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. Yet through it all, he remained grounded. He continued working shifts as a security guard, though his company now offered him more flexible roles with leadership training opportunities. More importantly, he had become a role model to his younger sister, who told him one evening, "Marcus, you showed me that doing the right thing matters, even when no one's watching." Meanwhile, Sundar Pichai received letters from around the world, students, teachers, parents, CEOs, all thanking him for modeling humility and respect. One letter from a teacher in rural Kenya read, "Your actions showed my students that kindness is the highest form of strength." We watched the video together and discussed what it means to lead with heart. Moved by these messages, Sundar began advocating within Google for expanded educational outreach on ethical leadership, especially in underrepresented communities. As the Human Leadership Project gained momentum, Sundar proposed a bold idea during an executive meeting. "Let's take this beyond Google," he said. "Let's create an open-source leadership curriculum, free for any organization, school, or individual, that teaches empathy, integrity, and respect as core leadership skills." The proposal was met with enthusiasm. Within weeks, Google partnered with leadership scholars and nonprofit organizations to develop Leading with Humanity, an open framework for values-based leadership. The framework included modules on active listening, leading through service, managing ego, and responding to mistakes with humility, all illustrated through real-world case studies, including Marcus's story. When the framework launched publicly, it was downloaded by thousands of organizations. Within the first month, Fortune 500 companies incorporated it into executive retreats. Startups used it to shape their emerging cultures. Schools adopted it to teach leadership to students. The movement had become a wave. Amidst this global impact, Sundar continued to stay connected with Marcus. They exchanged occasional emails, and Sundar ensured that Marcus received updates about the Human Leadership Project. In one message, Sundar wrote, "Marcus, your integrity sparked a conversation the world needed. Never underestimate the power of one honest act." Marcus replied with gratitude, expressing how deeply the experience had shaped his outlook on life. Back in his personal sphere, Sundar found the incident had also strengthened his own reflections on leadership. During a private conversation with his wife, Anjali, he confided, "We often think about innovation in terms of products, but perhaps the most important innovations are in how we treat each other. This has reminded me that leadership begins with character, not code." As the months progressed, the story's ripple effects continued. Marcus was invited to contribute a chapter to a forthcoming book on ethical leadership, where he wrote candidly about his experience. He concluded with a powerful insight. Integrity is not about the big moments. It's about the small ones when no one is watching, and when someone in power honors that, it changes everything. At Google, the Human Leadership Project became a permanent fixture, influencing not only how managers were trained but also how performance was evaluated. Sundar made a point of embedding empathy and integrity as key leadership metrics. More subtly, the culture of the organization began to shift. Employees at all levels felt more empowered to speak up, more valued in their roles, and more committed to treating each other with respect. In the wider world, the story became a symbol of hope, a reminder that in an era too often defined by ego and division, Quiet acts of principle and grace still mattered. For Sundar Pichai and Marcus Taylor, their unlikely intersection had illuminated a path forward, not just for themselves, but for millions seeking to lead and live with integrity. But as with any journey, new challenges awaited. The attention and acclaim had been largely positive. Yet both Sundar and Marcus would soon face tests that would require them to live out these lessons in even deeper ways. For when values are celebrated publicly, the pressure to uphold them grows ever stronger. What neither man yet knew was that the next chapter of this story would take them beyond headlines, into decisions and moments that would once again test their character and once again inspire the world. Testing the legacy months had passed since that fateful morning when Marcus Taylor, a humble security guard, had stopped Sundar Pichai at the gate of his own tech forum. What began as a simple moment of principle had transformed into a global symbol of humility, integrity, and leadership. The Human Leadership Project had spread far beyond the walls of Google, inspiring organizations, schools, and communities across continents. Marcus had become a quiet role model, his story referenced in leadership summits and academic circles alike. Sundar, for his part, had deepened his personal commitment to embedding empathy into the core of Google's culture. Yet beneath the surface of this celebrated story, life continued with all its inevitable complexity. And soon both men would face new tests that would challenge them in ways no viral moment ever could. It began with a subtle shift in the winds. Within Google, while the Human Leadership Project was embraced by many, not everyone was thrilled with the new focus on values and empathy. In certain corners of the massive organization, particularly among older executives and hyper-competitive divisions, there was quiet grumbling that soft leadership might dilute the company's legendary focus on performance and innovation. One senior VP during a closed-door leadership offsite openly questioned, "Are we risking excellence in pursuit of warmth? Are we coddling instead of driving results?" Though the comment was not intended for wide circulation, word of it reached Sundar. Sundar understood the tension. Google's success had always been driven by a culture of relentless innovation and high standards, but he believed, now more than ever, that the future required a balance of head and heart. In a carefully crafted internal memo, he addressed the concern directly. Empathy does not weaken excellence, it strengthens it. When people feel valued and respected, they are empowered to do their best work. The pursuit of results and the honoring of humanity are not in conflict. They are partners. The memo resonated with many, but it also sparked deeper debates within Google's leadership ranks. Meanwhile, Marcus Taylor found himself navigating his own new challenges. Though he had returned to his security work with humility and gratitude, life had undeniably changed. Media requests still trickled in, though he declined most. Invitations to speak at leadership forums increased, and though he was honored, the constant attention sometimes weighed on him. "I never wanted to be a symbol," he confided to his mother one evening. "I just wanted to do my job with integrity." His mother, wise as always, replied, "You didn't choose to be a symbol, Marcus, but now that you are, you can use it to do good. Just stay true to who you are." Marcus took those words to heart. He began mentoring younger security staff in his company, teaching them about integrity, professionalism, and courage. He visited local schools to speak about values and standing firm in small moments. Yet the pressure of being in the public eye, even quietly, sometimes gnawed at his peace. He found solace in routine, early morning jogs, time with family, and reading philosophy books that deepened his reflections on life and purpose. Then came a new opportunity, and a new test. One morning, Marcus received an unexpected email from a major global corporation outside the tech world. The company, which had been rocked by a recent leadership scandal, wanted to hire Marcus as their new global integrity ambassador, a high-profile role with a substantial salary and public visibility. The offer was flattering, but Marcus felt uneasy. The company had a mixed reputation, and he questioned whether their motives were sincere or simply an attempt to polish their image through association with his story. After much reflection and several long conversations with his family, Marcus politely declined the offer. In his reply, he wrote, "Integrity cannot be sold or used as a shield. I believe in earning trust, not borrowing it." News of his decision quietly reached Sundar, who sent Marcus a simple message. "You continue to inspire me. Never compromise your values." The bond between them, forged in that first unexpected moment, had grown into a quiet mutual respect. Yet a larger test still loomed, one that would thrust both men back into the global spotlight. As part of Google's ongoing leadership outreach, Sundar had agreed to deliver a keynote at the prestigious World Business Ethics Forum. The event would feature leaders from across industries, with sessions broadcast to millions worldwide. Unbeknownst to Sundar, the event organizers had also invited Marcus to deliver a joint session on everyday integrity. When Marcus received the invitation, he hesitated. Public speaking was not his natural domain, and the prospect of sharing a stage with Sundar before a global audience was daunting. But after much thought, he accepted, driven by a sense of purpose greater than his own discomfort. The weeks leading up to the forum were filled with preparation. Marcus worked with a mentor on crafting his speech, determined to speak from the heart. Sundar, meanwhile, structured his keynote to highlight the importance of valuing every role within an organization. The anticipation grew steadily, with media outlets previewing the unlikely pairing as the event's most anticipated moment. Finally, the day arrived. The grand auditorium buzzed with expectation as leaders, journalists, and viewers tuned in from around the world. Sundar took the stage first, delivering a powerful address on ethical leadership in the digital age. "Innovation must be guided by values," he declared. "Technology shapes the future, but humanity must shape technology." Then came the moment the audience had waited for. Marcus Taylor stepped onto the stage, nerves fluttering but heart steady. He began simply, "I am not a CEO. I am not a technologist. I am a security guard. And yet, one small moment taught me and the world that integrity matters at every level." He recounted his story, not as a tale of fame, but as a lesson in standing firm on principle. "We don't choose our moments," he said, "but we can choose who we are in those moments." The room was silent, rapt. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. As Sundar joined him on stage, the two men shared a quiet handshake. No longer a CEO and a guard, but equals in the eyes of those who now saw them both as exemplars of integrity. In a closing reflection, Sundar said, "Marcus taught us that leadership is not defined by title or role. It is defined by character. And in that he leads us all." The forum's broadcast reached millions, and the session became one of the most viewed leadership talks in the event's history. But for Marcus and Sundar, the true reward lay not in applause or headlines, but in the deeper impact they hoped to inspire, a world where respect, humility, and integrity were not rare exceptions but everyday expectations. As they left the stage, Sundar turned to Marcus and said, "This is only the beginning. Let's keep walking this path, together." Marcus smiled, knowing that while life would always bring new tests, the values they shared would guide them through. And so, as the sun set on a day that had once again touched the world, two men, one who led a global company and one who guarded its gates, walked forward with quiet purpose, united by a simple truth. Leadership begins with how we treat one another. The True Legacy Months. After their joint appearance at the World Business Ethics Forum, the story of Sundar Pichai and Marcus Taylor continued to inspire millions across the globe. Yet for both men, life had settled once again into quieter rhythms. Public acclaim had ebbed, and the world had turned its attention to new headlines. But the deeper legacy of their shared moment remained alive, not in viral videos or media soundbites, but in the hearts and minds of people across industries, communities, and generations. Within Google, the Human Leadership Project had now matured into a global movement inside the company. Leadership training programs across the organization wove its lessons into the fabric of everyday operations. Performance evaluations included new dimensions of empathy, active listening, and respect. Managers were now routinely evaluated not just on outcomes but on how they treated their teams. It was not a perfect transformation. No culture change ever is, but the ripple effects were undeniable. More employees reported feeling valued, heard, and empowered to bring their whole selves to work. Sundar Pichai in his own leadership had grown even more reflective. The events of the past year had reinforced a lesson he had long believed, but had now seen proven. The small moments matter the most. He became more intentional about walking the halls of Google's campuses, stopping to greet staff at every level. When he traveled to international offices, he prioritized listening sessions with frontline workers. In one particularly moving visit to Google's Manila office, a janitor named Emilio approached him shyly and said, "Sir, thank you for showing us that every role matters. You make us proud to be part of this company." Sundar, moved, embraced the man and replied, "You are the heart of this company." Meanwhile, Marcus Taylor continued to live with quiet purpose. He had accepted a new role within his security firm, one that allowed him to train new recruits in integrity-based leadership while still working occasional shifts on the ground. He cherished the balance of staying connected to his roots while helping shape a new generation of security professionals. His talks at schools and community centers remained deeply personal. In one memorable visit to a high school in Oakland, a young student asked him, "Mr. Taylor, weren't you scared to stop someone so powerful?" Marcus smiled gently and said, "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to do what's right, even when fear is present." The bond between Sundar and Marcus endured. Though they led very different lives, they exchanged occasional emails and messages. Simple check-ins, reflections on life, and encouragement. On one quiet weekend, Sundar invited Marcus and his family to a private lunch at his home. Over simple, home-cooked dishes prepared by Sundar and his wife Anjali, the two men spoke freely about their journeys. Marcus shared how he struggled sometimes with the attention, and Sundar offered wisdom about finding peace amid public scrutiny. Anjali added softly, "Remember, Marcus, the world will always try to put you in a story, but you must live your truth, not their version of it." That day, a new idea began to take shape. As they talked about their shared experiences, Sundar proposed a project close to both their hearts: the Everyday Integrity Foundation, a nonprofit initiative dedicated to promoting values-based leadership in schools, community organizations, and workplaces around the world. The foundation would offer free resources, training, and mentorship to help people cultivate courage, empathy, and integrity in their daily lives, regardless of title or status. Marcus was initially hesitant. "I'm not a public figure. I'm just a guard." Sundar smiled. "And that is exactly why your voice matters. You represent the principle that anyone in any role can lead with integrity." After thoughtful discussions and with the support of both their families, they agreed to move forward. Together with a small team of passionate volunteers, they began building the foundation. Marcus served as its first community integrity ambassador, a role that allowed him to speak authentically to audiences often left out of traditional leadership conversations. The launch of the Everyday Integrity Foundation quietly gained momentum. Without fanfare or corporate sponsorships, it attracted educators, nonprofit leaders, small business owners, and frontline workers who resonated with its mission. Workshops were held in local libraries, community centers, and schools. Stories poured in from people who had faced moments of ethical challenge and found strength in the Foundation's teachings. A bus driver in Mumbai wrote, "Your story reminded me to speak up when I saw unfair treatment. Thank you for showing us that integrity matters." A nurse in São Paulo shared, "I was about to quit because I felt invisible. Now I remember that my work has dignity and I can lead with heart." Through it all, Marcus remained grounded. He refused personal fame or endorsements, insisting that the focus remain on the message, not the messenger. Sundar honored that wish, using his own platform to quietly amplify the Foundation's work without overshadowing it. Together they built something authentic, a living legacy of the moment that had first connected them. Then came an unexpected invitation that would bring their story full circle. The United Nations Global Leadership Forum, an annual gathering of leaders from around the world, invited Sundar and Marcus to deliver a joint address on everyday leadership and the future of human-centered values. The event would be broadcast globally, reaching millions. Both men were humbled and cautious. They knew the danger of turning a meaningful story into mere spectacle. After much reflection, they agreed to accept on the condition that their address would focus on actionable insights, not personal glory. As they prepared, Sundar and Marcus collaborated closely on their remarks. They wanted to speak not as CEO and guard, but as two human beings united by shared values. On the day of the address, as they waited backstage at the UN, Marcus turned to Sundar and said quietly, "Thank you for seeing me that day, not just as a security guard, but as a person." Sundar placed a hand on his shoulder and replied, "And thank you for reminding me of who I aspire to be." Their address was simple yet profound. Sundar spoke first, urging global leaders to redefine leadership not by power or prestige, but by compassion and integrity. The greatest innovations we need today are not technological. They are human. Empathy, respect, and courage. Then Marcus took the stage. His voice was steady, his message clear. Leadership is not about titles. It is about choices. Every day, in every moment, we can choose integrity. And when we do, we lead, no matter our role. The audience rose, in a standing ovation, not for fame or charisma, but for the universal truth both men had articulated. The moment was broadcast to millions, inspiring a new wave of conversations about leadership grounded in humanity. Afterward, as they walked out of the grand hall into the cool evening air, Marcus and Sundar shared a quiet smile. No words were needed. They both knew that the true legacy of their story was not in headlines or speeches, but in the lives quietly touched by the values they now carried forward. In the years that followed, the Everyday Integrity Foundation continued to grow. Marcus's story became a timeless example taught in schools, leadership programs, and community workshops. Sundar remained a steadfast advocate for human-centered leadership in the tech world and beyond. Their friendship endured, not as a novelty but as a living testament to the power of respect, courage, and humility. And somewhere, in offices, classrooms, and quiet corners of the world, countless individuals, security guards, teachers, nurses, engineers, stood a little taller, remembered a simple truth, that leadership begins not with position, but with character, and that in the small unseen moments we can all choose to lead with integrity. The journey continues years past, yet the simple, unscripted moment that had unfolded at the entrance of a grand tech event still echoed in places neither Sundar Pichai nor Marcus Taylor could have foreseen. The story had become an enduring modern parable, shared in classrooms, leadership seminars, board meetings, and humble community centers. But life, ever dynamic, continued to unfold in new directions, testing and expanding the very lessons the world had drawn from that morning. And for Sundar and Marcus, their intertwined journeys were far from over. Inside Google, the Human Leadership Project had evolved into a cornerstone of the company's identity. What had begun as an internal initiative now shaped everything from recruitment to product design to global partnerships. Leadership assessments included a mandatory reflection on empathy, accountability, and humility. Teams celebrated not only innovation milestones but acts of kindness and courage that strengthened Google's cultural fabric. Perhaps most notably, Google's top leadership embraced a deeper shift, prioritizing long-term societal impact over short-term optics. Yet this transformation was not without resistance. In the hyper-competitive world of global tech, critics argued that such a values-driven culture might slow the relentless pace of innovation. Skeptics in the media published think pieces with headlines like, "Is Google losing its edge by embracing soft leadership?" Investors questioned whether the company's prioritization of empathy could survive the cutthroat realities of the marketplace. Sundar met this new wave of scrutiny head-on. In a widely viewed shareholder meeting, he delivered a clear and unwavering message. "We are not choosing between excellence and empathy. We are building a model where the two are inseparable. If we fail to honor the dignity of every person, Our technological achievements will ultimately ring hollow. His words, grounded in personal conviction, resonated deeply, not just with Google employees, but with an ever-growing public eager to see a different kind of leadership. Meanwhile, Marcus Taylor's life continued to unfold in unexpected ways. Though he remained as humble as ever, he now carried a quiet awareness of the responsibility his story carried. The Everyday Integrity Foundation, which he had helped co-found with Sundar, had grown into a respected global movement. Without seeking fame or corporate sponsorships, it had empowered countless individuals to see themselves as leaders in their everyday lives. Its workshops had reached teachers in South Africa, health workers in rural India, young entrepreneurs in Eastern Europe, and veterans reintegrating into civilian life in the United States. Yet amidst this global impact, Marcus never lost sight of his own path. He still mentored young security staff. He still worked shifts when he could, walking the same kinds of posts where his story had first begun. It was during one such shift, an ordinary evening at a mid-sized corporate event, that Marcus encountered a moment that would once again test his commitment to integrity. Late in the evening, a high-profile executive arrived unexpectedly. The guest list had already closed, and security protocol dictated that no additional entries were allowed. The executive, confident in his status, insisted on being allowed in, pressuring Marcus and invoking powerful connections. The other guards hesitated, unsure how to respond. Marcus, remembering the moment that had changed his own life, stood firm. "I'm sorry, sir. Without prior clearance, I cannot permit entry. The protocol is for everyone." The executive grew angry, threatening to escalate the matter to the company's leadership. Word of the incident quickly reached the event organizers. To Marcus's surprise, instead of being reprimanded, he was commended for upholding the rules with professionalism and grace. The incident, though small, was a powerful reminder that integrity is an ongoing choice, not a one-time event. When Sundar later heard about it through mutual contacts, he wrote to Marcus, "Once again, you remind us that leadership is built in the quiet moments. Thank you for continuing to walk this path with such courage." Later that year, another opportunity arose, one that neither man had anticipated. The World Economic Forum, in recognition of the Everyday Integrity Foundation's impact, invited both Sundar and Marcus to help shape a new global charter on ethical leadership in the digital age. The initiative aimed to guide companies, governments, and civil society in embedding values-driven leadership at all levels. As they prepared for this new chapter of collaboration, Sundar and Marcus reflected on their shared journey. During a private dinner before the forum, Sundar said thoughtfully, "You know, Marcus, sometimes I wonder, what if that day at the gate had never happened?" Marcus smiled. "It probably would have been just another event. You would have given your keynote and I'd have gone home without a second thought." They both laughed softly. Then Sundar added, "But because of that moment, because you chose to do what was right and we both chose to respond with respect, a different kind of story began." That night, they discussed not just leadership, but life, the importance of humility, the value of unseen work, and the enduring power of small acts done with great integrity. They knew that the world often celebrated grand gestures, but they had come to believe that the true fabric of leadership was woven in moments that seldom made headlines. When they took the stage at the World Economic Forum, they did so not as a CEO and a former security guard, but as partners in a quiet revolution of values. Their contributions helped shape a new global framework that called on leaders to prioritize empathy, transparency, and human dignity alongside innovation and efficiency. After the forum, a young attendee, a startup founder from Nairobi, approached them with tears in her eyes. "Your story," she said, "helped me see that I can lead with heart in my company, even when everyone tells me to be ruthless. Thank you for giving me permission to be the kind of leader I believe in." Marcus and Sundar both embraced her, warmly, knowing that this was the true measure of their journey. As the years continued, the impact of their story only deepened. The Everyday Integrity Foundation expanded its reach, partnering with schools, community organizations, and small, Businesses. Google's culture remained a beacon of values-driven leadership amidst an often cynical corporate landscape. And the story of the security guard who had stopped the CEO, handled with humility, courage, and grace, became a timeless lesson passed from generation to generation. For Marcus, life remained grounded. He still lived in the same modest apartment, still cherished time with his family, and still took quiet joy in helping others see the leader within themselves. For Sundar, the experience had forever shaped his understanding of leadership. In moments of great decision, he would often reflect, "Am I honoring the dignity of everyone involved? Am I leading with heart as well as head?" And for the world, their story stood as a testament to an enduring truth, that the greatest acts of leadership are not found in titles, wealth, or power, but in the simple, courageous choices we make to honor one another's humanity. And so, as new challenges and opportunities continued to arise, Sundar Pichai and Marcus Taylor walked forward, not in pursuit of legacy, but in quiet service to a larger purpose. A purpose born in a small moment, at a simple gate, that had changed the world in ways neither of them could have ever imagined.